My new book, Pillars for Life, A Guide to Spiritual Ethics and Practice, is now out and available for you to read and purchase. You can check out our website, willowhealing.org, to find a link, or you can find it on Amazon. We look forward to getting your feedback, and if you love it, please leave a review and share with your friends. Now it's time for the show. Welcome to Willow Healing Matters, the podcast. We are so excited to have you joining us on this journey where we explore different ways to empower your soul, whether it's healing in your kitchen or all the way up in the corporate world. Come with us as we look into different ways to heal your mind, body, and soul. Hey everyone, it's Catherine from Willow Healing with another episode of Willow Healing Matters, and today I am joined by the lovely Clarissa Shipley. She is a dedicated women's and fertility mentor who has supported hundreds of women to reclaim their power, balance their bodies, and connect deeply with themselves. Blending holistic practices, powerful mindset tools, and self-belief work, she helps women feel seen, supported, and empowered as they navigate conception, motherhood, transformations, and beyond. Her heart-led approach has changed lives and created lasting transformation in the lives of many women. So a big welcome to the show, Clarissa, and I'm excited for this conversation.
Oh, me too. Yes, that sounds perfectly like me.
Amazing. Amazing.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, you did. And I was listening thinking, wow, yeah, that's exactly what I do. So thank you so much.
So I guess what led you to working with fertility and women particularly? I know you're a woman, but there's often a story there that leads us to work with who we work with, right?
There is, yes. So, yeah, I feel very deeply called to work with women in particular. Have worked with men as well, but it really is mostly women. And I've always worked with women, young women, and then I've always held space for women through business and personally as well. But what really led me to beginning exactly what I do now is my own fertility journey. So I've always been on my spiritual path, even as a child. I've always been very confident with my gifts and my talents and who I am and all of those things. But it was my fertility journey that really rocked my world and really took me to a new journey, but one that I understood the depth of womanhood.
And so through that exploration, was it that shifted, like got you through that fertility journey? Was it you had support, or you just went really deep with your own spiritual work, or how did that kind of look?
Yeah, so I think when a woman gives birth, we have a rebirth and it's a whole
Yes.
new identity. And it's, we really have to press start again. Like, okay, we're pressing reset. We're a new woman. We're a new identity. This feels new. So I had my first child. And so all of that happened. But over the next 12 years, I had babies and lost babies. So it took me 12 years to create my family. And I lost over 12 years, 5 babies and birthed 3. So I carried 8 babies over 12 years. And so there was this rebirth as a woman, but also this light and shade for 12 years for me of having a child, but also losing babies and the grief. And I didn't really give myself space to hold that grief because I was a mum. And, when you're a mum, you can't always be present with what you actually need and what you feel because, you've got to be present for a little person and hold space for that little person, 24/7. So I didn't give myself space to heal or to grieve or to really feel the emotions that came up with loss. And some of the losses were quite traumatic. One was a twin pregnancy as well, and quite far along. So it was easier for me to pretend that everything was fine. And I found that I had all of a sudden no support and that everyone thought I was okay and I actually wasn't. And so it was this light and shade of life, the high of being a mum, but also this low of sort of like I was in the shadows of my own depth and I didn't know how to get out of it. And after years of these traumas, I was experiencing anxiety, lack of connection with my body. Even though I was always spiritual and always connected, I'd lost myself completely. combination of pushing things down, combination of not giving myself space, and I really hit rock bottom. And it was after my fifth baby that I lost at 14 weeks. And I remember my biggest turning point was outside in the night. I used to go outside to cry, to hide it, so that my family wouldn't see.
Yeah.
And I would go and moon gaze and howl to the moon and cry and scream and release. And we lived in the bush, so it was no one around. So I was really releasing. And it was in that moment after my fifth pregnancy loss that I said to myself, this has to change. I can't do this anymore. Something has to change. You've lost yourself, Clarissa. And I made a promise to myself that evening, I never want another woman to feel the way I do. And if I can turn this story around and find myself again, and not only find myself, but have the baby that I was desiring, if I could change my story and turn everything around, I promise I will support others. And that's exactly what happened from that moment. I turned my story around and I made 40 lifestyle changes, and I went on to have a little girl. And I've supported women in that fertility space and empowerment since.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that story. And I lost my first baby as well.
Mm.
So I fully, and it was very early on. So no one kind of knew. My husband knew and I knew, and we only kind of knew because, when you're trying, you go pee on the stick when your period's late, right? Because you're
Mm.
conscious of that. And it still hurts. Like it's still, even though it's still that expectation and still the growth. And I can't compare because you were further along, but at the same time, there's still this bond that you have with this child, even though it doesn't come into this world how we expect it to come into this world. And with a lot of the work I had to do to unpack that was I didn't actually realize till actually recently part of their energy was still imprinted in my womb.
Mm.
And and this is a big thing people don't realize, that when women experience that loss and their miscarriage, whether they know or they don't know, there's still that energy's hanging in that womb, and it can be really difficult to shift on your own. And sometimes you do need people outside you to support you. But at the same time, it's this exploration of that deeper connection and understanding, like you said, that journey, and realizing that, and how powerful that you realized it was something within you that had to change, as rather than blaming everything outside of you as well.
And may I say, Catherine, that, women, we sort of compare ourselves that I wasn't as far along as you. And so therefore I can't hold that grief, or I can't have the same experience as you because I wasn't far along. It's still grief. And when we lose a baby, our bodies don't know how far along we were. And also the little soul that's leaving sometimes doesn't want to leave.
Mm-hmm.
So they're still around. So that adds to the confusion. Um, and sometimes our bodies aren't ready to let go. So even though we've experienced loss, our bodies still hold on. And I remember after one of my pregnancy losses, I felt pregnant for a very long time. My boobs were still big. I still had a belly, and I couldn't look in the mirror because I saw a pregnant woman, but I knew there was no baby there, and that lasted months. So there's this confusion. And when we are carrying a pregnancy, it's part of our blood. It's part, that our blood runs together through our bones and through our bodies. So we're deeply connected no matter how many weeks, no matter how many months. So I really want to normalize grief and loss, and that there is no expectation of how far along you were, because it all is relevant. It's our body's story, and it's all relevant, and we have a right to grieve and a right to really fully experience.
Yeah, definitely. And it's when you were sharing before by some of those souls stick around.
Mm.
It's really interesting the amount of people I have met who have miscarried or lost a baby, and then when they do have a child, that child ends up playing with the spirit of the soul that
Mhm.
left. So I still remember it was before kind of my spiritual reawakening, but friends of ours, they went into the bedroom and their daughter was jumping on the bed and laughing and giggling, like playing with another child, and they're freaking out because they only have one child, and they're like, "What's that?" And they went in and they're like, he's like, and the mum just said, "Who are you playing with?" And she's like, oh, it's so and so, which is what they named their son that passed. He's come back to say he's here to look after me and he misses you, mummy, and he wish he could have stayed.
Mm.
But he wasn't meant to. And it's not the first story I've heard like that. And, it's often when we go through that loss, there's a journey that soul had to go through as well. And, we had to, go through that loss to understand it, but then also the soul that chose to leave for a reason too. And it's really interesting when you start to unpack soul contracts and lessons and everything like that, because you just get more curious. And yes, the pain's still there, the grief's still there, but you grow from that and you learn. And like you, Clarissa, then you champion to make sure that other women could have the resilience and the empowerment to get through that journey as well, through fertility, and speak about other things that people don't talk about.
Absolutely. I felt that through my losses and my grief, that there was an expiry date that, Clarissa's fine. That was months ago. She's got back up. And, behind the scenes, I was not fine. And yeah, I think there's that expectation of that we put on each other that, move on, try again, up you get. And it's just not the case. It's, by pushing it down, it just always bubbles back up. So it is my honour now to support women moving through fertility, but through loss and all of the shadow work of women, the depth that we experience as well, just to honour all of it.
Yeah, exactly. And honoring, like you said at the start, that almost that loss, and it's like a loss of an identity when your child is born. That's the only way I can describe it, because all of a sudden, who you thought you were, until you push that baby out, it's all changed. And a friend of mine, she recently was having her third, and it was quite traumatic, her birth, because it actually happened a bit too quickly and all these things. But she was getting the gas because she couldn't stop bleeding. And she looked at her husband. She'd already pushed her son out and went, what are we doing? We had two boys. We were quite happy. Like, what is this about? And it was almost like, even though she was already a mum, she realized that it was like another dynamic shift and another
Mm.
identity shift. And it was too late at that point, but she said, I just remember like saying that before I went and had the gas so I could go under so they could operate and everything else. But at the same time, she was just like, it was such a contrasting experience. And she had very different birth journeys with each of her children as well. And I feel that's something that's not acknowledged too, that just because you've had one child doesn't mean you're going to understand the birth for the next one, because there's so many things at play, and also, being heard through that journey. And I love that you support women, as they transition through that too, because it's such a big change and a shift in your dynamic with yourself and your husband or your partner and your life, and how everything's showing up.
Yeah, absolutely. And then every child's different too. So not only the birth, but every child's different. So we have one child and think this is going to be a breeze, or this is going to look like this, and then we're adding more and more and more, and so women are holding more and more and more. And that's exactly why I hold space for women, because we go through so many different turns and bumps and ups and downs. It's really, we're continually going through rites of passage. We're continually, from when we have our first bleed to then becoming mothers, if we choose to become mothers, or struggling with fertility and losses, and then we go through premenopause and menopause. We're always just evolving. And it feels like we're having rebirths and changing our identities all the time. And that takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of space holding and a lot of patience with ourselves as well.
Yeah, 100%. It is a lot of patience, and it is a lot of, you don't know. Like, you really don't know.
Mm.
It doesn't
Mm.
matter. I worked with children for nearly 20 years. And at the same time, like, I never had any expectations working with children, because you never knew what was going on with them. But also, they're all their own unique little personalities. And it was funny, because the amount of parents that I met who were like, if I had the second one first, I wouldn't have had another one. It's like, okay, fair enough, because it's just that contrasting. But I often find when there's two children, there's like a yin and yang energy, right? Like, it's very balancing when you see them. Like, if you had a quiet child, then the next one's loud. If you had a loud child, the next one's quiet. Like, it's very interesting, those dynamics that play out. And then you have three and it shifts it again. And then you've got that whole middle child syndrome kind of thing come up. And then, then I don't know what happens beyond that. But, once you get up to those higher numbers, it starts to change that play and how everything shifts. So there's this constant shifting of dynamics between you, between your children, between your partner, between the outside world. And it just constantly evolves, and there's not enough space or discussion about that.
Absolutely. And for us, because of our fertility journey, we have our eldest finishing high school and our youngest in first year of primary school. So that is evidence of my fertility journey and how long it took me to have my babies. But now I'm holding almost an 18-year-old and a 5-year-old and a child in between. So it's getting stretched, from one extreme to the other. But, we make it work. I'm really grateful that now I have so many skills that I've learned along the way to hold space for all of this, and so many embodiment practices that I have to do to really thrive while I'm holding so much.
Yeah, and I love that you bring that up too, because you embody what you teach people then, right? Because I feel that that's such an important thing when we're, smothered by people on social media and everything like that, is that you're holding authentic presence because you have been through that journey and you can give true compassion, right? Because you understand. And so often, if we want to go find people we want to work with, we want people who have walked the walk, right? So rather than just talk the talk. And I really love that about you, Clarissa, that you went, okay, this is the pain I went through. I don't want anyone else to go through that pain. So I'm going to shift this into a way to help honor souls and also honor the women and empower them so that they don't feel so alone going through this journey if they have to go through it.
Absolutely. And what I learned most is how much we hold that we are able to change our story from ourselves. There's so much wisdom that women hold, and there's this primal intuition that she knows what to do and she knows when to do it. But due to fear and due to external noise and pressures and societal pressures, we forget. And that's where I was lost. I was hearing so much noise and so many people expecting me to be fine. I had specialists saying another baby is unlikely at your age and with so many losses. So I had this noise, this heaviness there from specialists, heaviness there from friends and family, or the sorry, the pity that was coming from my loved ones, this pity, this, sometimes I just wanted to be heard and held, but it was this sort of, you'll be fine, you'll try again, keep going, this, or feeling really sorry for me. And I actually just wanted a hug. And I just wanted to be heard. And I just wanted to talk about my loss. And I just wanted someone to hear me. But it was this immense pressure and I didn't have the skills to cope. And then when I had that moment with the moon in the darkness and I made a decision to turn my story around, then I gained all of these skills and I changed my life and realized that all of the answers were already within me. I just got overwhelmed. I just got stuck after years of trauma and grief. So, when I'm holding space for a woman, a lot of the work is her, and most of the work is actually her. I'm just sort of poking to get the answers out of her, or to hold space so that she can listen to her intuition and be guided in a different direction. So I just love how powerful we are and how much we already know. We have the answers, but we just get lost. We're overwhelmed, pulled in too many different directions as women, I feel. And when we slow down and we reconnect to ourselves, the answers are within, usually.
And I so resonate with this because currently I'm teaching, or the theme of what I'm teaching my clients is their courageous no, and learning how to say no to people, right?
Mm-hmm,
Because
mm-hmm,
so often as mothers, we feel we have to keep saying yes, even when
mm-hmm.
we're exhausted, even when we're grieving, even when we're anxious, even when we're overwhelmed. It's like this idea that we have to keep saying yes, but sometimes the most beautiful thing we can do for everyone, including ourselves, is to say no and to say, I'm done. Like you said to the moon, right? I'm done with this. I'm finding a new way, and I feel it comes to that moment where we have that breakdown, because I actually had a similar discussion with my worth story with money. I was like, I'm done with this. I'm like, I'm just done. I just remember sitting down at my desk where I am now and going, what is this? I'm like, nah, I'm done. I'm done with this. I'm figuring it out and I'm done. And it was done but you had to get to that point where you're consciously ready, because subconsciously you're kind of ready, but still you need to speak it into existence, because, and that's why I teach women no, because it's, the specialist is telling you something and it's not sitting with your intuition. Say no, say, go get a second opinion, go get a third opinion, go get a fourth opinion, until someone actually hears you, exactly like you shared, Clarissa. You just wanted to be heard. And this is what's such a powerful thing that needs to happen. If you're engaging a professional, it doesn't matter if they're spiritual, if they're medical, it doesn't matter what, you need to make sure that you feel heard and seen. Otherwise, they're not the people that you should be working with.
Absolutely. How deep can we go on this topic, Catherine? Can we go deep?
Deep as you like. Go deep.
Okay, so the work that I do with women is we unveil their intuition. We unveil a woman's deeper inner knowing. And like I said, we have these layers of complexity in our lives that push our intuition down, and it's sort of like we become, sort of follow the leader, do as we're told. And we're going into that cycle. And what I do is draw out the intuition. I'll give some examples when I have challenged my own intuition. An example is I've been told that I would never give birth due to a hip childhood disease, that I would never give birth, and that I would have a C-section for my first child. This was before labour had even started. And I challenged it. Why? How do you know? What makes you think that? How do you know if I haven't actually tried? And the answer was, you've got a big baby, and that you've got a big baby. And I'm not giving medical advice here, by the way. This is my personal story. This is not medical advice. This is not me saying all women must challenge. This is me sharing my story. So if you're listening, you're holding space for me and my story. So I was told that I have a big baby and that I wouldn't be able to give birth due to my childhood hip disease. And so my intuition was like, no, you don't get to tell me what I can and can't do way before labor. That doesn't feel good. And every part of me wanted to challenge it. So I went to my family history, and there it was. My grandmother had given birth in the 90s to a 10-pound baby on her own. There it was. In my ancestral line, a woman has given birth to a 10-pound baby who was smaller than me and did it on her own in the 1940s. And here's me in 2007 about to give birth, all these years later. So I'm not giving medical advice, but I rejected 3 C-sections. Not my story.
Yeah.
I'm giving birth. And I gave birth to my 9-pound beautiful baby boy. So that's one example of listening to my intuition. I knew in my bones that that's not how my story goes. And I had several specialists tell me, we're going to do a C-section, even an emergency C-section. And I said no. So that's one example. And then, specialists have told me, you're unlikely to have your baby. This is years later with my third child. Unlikely to have your baby at your age and after losing 5 babies. It's unlikely. And even with IVF, still unlikely. There's no guarantee. And I challenged it. And I said, is there anything I can do to change my fertility? Is there anything I can do to improve my own fertility? And the answer was a laugh and a no. It was a no. And the answer was, if there was anything that women could do, everyone would be doing it and I'd be out of a job. That was the response that I got. And so I challenged it. Something within me, my intuition, my inner knowing said, challenge it. And that's, I made 40 lifestyle changes and came back to that specialist pregnant only months later. And when I'd given birth to that baby, my specialist said, thank you for teaching me all that you taught me, Clarissa. Turns out women can certainly change their fertility. So great specialist that he admitted, but he hadn't seen a woman do it. He hadn't seen anyone challenge. We went from having 10-minute appointments to an hour and a half appointments because I would challenge everything and ask questions and really get to know where the information was coming from, because my point was, I'm not a statistic. Every woman's body is different. I'm not a number. And that's where I was coming from. If you're looking at statistics, if you're looking at graphs, if you're looking at numbers, I'm not a number. I don't fit in with that. And so, I didn't have that doctor at my birth. And I said to him, "You won't be there." And he wanted to schedule me in. I said, "You actually won't be there. I don't see you in the room." And he wasn't. He wasn't in the room. So, there's this beautiful depth of women that we have this inner knowing. And it's not just Clarissa. It's not just me. My baby was born 2 minutes off the time and date that I said she would be. And I wrote it in my diary over and over again. And I meditated on seeing my baby, how she was born and when she was born. And she was born 2 minutes off exactly the way that I had intended. So there's this, it's a dance between intuition and inner knowing, but also, are we being shown? Was I being shown that that's when my baby was going to be born and how before it happened? So it's receiving information. It's also this deep inner knowing that women have. And that's the work that I do, is we unveil what's already there within you. Let's have a look. And really, that's women are changing their stories just by doing that.
And it's such an interesting topic. A couple months ago, I was on a panel about women reclaiming their health and their power in the health, because we had so many stories. There was just 5 of us as panelists, mind you, about examples of us being ignored and our intuition being pushed to the side because the specialist was adamant they were right, or the professional was adamant that they were right. And there's been this societal belief where we have to give up our power over our own bodies to a doctor. And it's truly not the case. We have to reclaim that. And it's not, putting Western medicine to a side. It has a place. But at the same time, you still need to be heard, and you still need to have your intuition known. And I always used to say that to my clients: you know your child better than I do. I'm just sharing what this assessment's come out with or whatever. If you don't agree with it, that's fine. You know your child better than I do. I'm a stranger. I spent 10 minutes with them. If you don't agree with that, that's fine. Let's just monitor it. And if it's not a problem, it's not a problem. Because I understood, I understood that as a parent, you know more than the person in front of you. And I had a similar battle with a few professionals, because these people kept telling me my son had a tongue tie. And I was like, no, he doesn't. And then one actually turned around and said to me, "What do you know?" I said, "I'm a speech pathologist. He definitely doesn't have a tongue tie." And they said, "Oh, that doesn't mean anything. You don't know anything." And I was like, this is my, like, you actually questioning my whole credentials and everything now. Like, this is beyond. And he never did. And his tongue, I never did anything about it. I didn't trust it. My intuition was screaming, no, 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 no. I just did my own thing. And he was still a thriving baby, but not to their standards. But I was like, nope, I'm doing my own thing. I trust he's okay. I had a really nice, beautiful naturopath that was supporting me, all these things. And then now he can touch his nose with his tongue. So if I cut that tongue tie, he would have massive speech issues. He would have trouble eating. He would have had this all the time, all these things. And then shortly after I had that, all these articles started to come out in our profession saying that tongue ties were being overdiagnosed and causing long-term problems with eating and other things like that. And it was really interesting, because I was just like, wow, because I followed my intuition and really honored it, like you did with your birth of your beautiful baby girl. We didn't let someone else take control of us. We stayed in power. And sometimes it's bloody hard,
It's
especially
so hard.
when they're pushing back and they're pushing back. I had so many fights with my OB. I'm just like, and I was like you, Clarissa, I challenged, but I didn't challenge at the last thing, and I didn't get the birth that I wanted because I was first time mum and I was scared, because then they play on that fear too. So this is where I feel the work you are doing is so important, integral, and sharing your story, because it gives other women the power to believe in their intuition again, and not to squish down that voice inside and just do what everyone else is telling them to do.
Absolutely. And, my last birth, I was told not to push. I was told, wait till the doctor comes, wait, don't push. And she was born within an hour from labour starting, from waters breaking to when she was birthed. And I said, I'm going to push, I'm ready. And I was told not to push over and over again. And I looked at my husband and said, I'm going to push. And he said, and I asked him to be my doula. I said, you know how within I go, and you know how I birth like a warrior, and you know that you have to hold space for me. So I looked at him and said, I'm going to push. And he said, Clarissa, trust your body. You know what to do. Push. And she was born in one push. And the midwife was over there doing something else. And I caught my baby. And the midwife, the first thing she said was, I don't have rubber gloves on. I wasn't ready. And I was saying over and over again, I'm going to give birth any minute, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. And I was told, wait,
Well,
don't push.
There's your 2-minute difference, Clarissa, because you wanted to push.
That's right. But that's our bodies know what to do. And that's just an example of birth, but it's the same in everyday life. We have this intuition that protects us and keeps us safe, and also can guide us into the most powerful version of ourselves. And it is that fear, those walls go up, and I know it's so hard, but since I've done those things, I now use these tools in life, and I've had the courage to change my entire life and to move with my children and completely change where we live and how we live. And so I'm always evolving and using that intuition to guide me, and it's life-changing.
Yes, it is.
Life-changing.
And from one intuitive to another, I understand. Because the things that you do and people think you're crazy, and then they're like, okay, it worked out. Fair enough.
Yeah.
And as we start to finish our time together, Clarissa, I ask the guests that come on the show, if you could change or heal something in the world, what would it be?
Do we really have to end this conversation?
I know.
What would I change? I would change how women feel about themselves. I would change how we have been conditioned to believe that our power is now removed. And I would change this story for our next generation, because I now raise 3 children and 2 of my daughters. I absolutely am living proof for my children, but also the women that I work with, seeing how their lives evolve and transform. It's not just a Clarissa thing. It's not so, listening to that intuition, unveiling our deepest truth without the fear. That's what I would change for women, having a safe space to hold space for the unveiling and the ripping apart the fear, so that women can transform. That's what I would change, is offering that to as many women as I can. And also just for women to change that story, that the power is within you. The power is within you. It's already there. That's what I would change, that we have that understanding.
100%. And if people want to come find you, Clarissa, where can they come and check you out?
Yeah, so I'm mostly hanging around my Instagram, which is Honouring Souls. I'm always in my DMs, so you can just drop it in a little chat in my DMs or a comment. That's where I hang out mostly, but also any way that you find Honouring Souls through the website as well. And I offer a beautiful program which is called the Divine Mother, and that's a 12-week program to hold space for that transformation to happen.
Beautiful. And I'll make sure to include those details in the show notes for you. But thank you, Clarissa. This has been a really powerful conversation. And thank you so much for sharing your journey of just not listening to anybody else but yourself.
Thank you so much, Catherine. Thank you. It's a beautiful conversation.
Thank you for listening to Willow Healing Matters, the podcast. We have so much love and gratitude that you have taken the time out of your day to empower you on your healing journey. The views shared by the person being interviewed might not necessarily reflect that of the host and should be used at your own discernment. Trust what resonates for you and follow your heart and soul guidance. If you have any underlying medical conditions or mental health issues, please consult with your healthcare provider before pursuing any of the recommendations. Likewise, you can always contact the person being interviewed to find out more information. This can be found in the show notes. Remember to activate, align, heal, empower, and find love in everything that you do.